Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Israel Connection. I'm Esti Zenati, and my special guest today is Adam Jeremy Edelman, also known as AJ Edelman. Hi, AJ.
Hi, how you doing?
Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
AJ is an American-born Israeli sliding sports athlete. He's an 8-time Israeli national champion in sliding sports, skeleton, and bobsled, who competed for Israel at the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea. And he's the pilot of BobTeam Edelman. AJ is also the first Orthodox Jew to compete in the Winter Olympics and the first Orthodox Jewish man to compete in either Olympic iteration. In 2023, he became the first ever Israeli to take podium in a sanctioned bobsled race. And in March 2024, he became the first Israeli to secure an overall podium on the North American Cup. And he is currently training for the 2026 Olympic Games with his bobsled team. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes, it's quite a generous introduction. Yes.
Yes. So you grew up in Massachusetts in the U.S., right?
Correct.
And you grew up to a very Zionist Jewish family.
I did.
And then you made aliyah in 2016. What led you to make aliyah, and how was that process for you?
In 2006, I visited Israel, and the Second Lebanon War broke out during that summer when I was visiting. Up until that point, my life was headed in one direction, a direction that I didn't like, that wasn't healthy. But after that summer, my life really turned around. I really made changes to it. I felt very much that I owed Israel my life, that I had owed Israel in a great way for what it had given me and the purpose that it had given me. Fostered a very deep love for the country. And I knew one day that I would become Israeli. So it really wasn't a question of if, but when.
And how was the aliyah process for you?
Very easy. I don't know what it's like now, but it was very simple.
Okay. Yeah, I hear stories about here, like, either one direction, but I think in general, I hear like good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think how people view you as an Oleh, though, is sometimes a little bit more difficult, especially if you didn't serve. I hopped over too late to serve in the military, and I think that that's been such a difficult thing even for me to kind of accept, because especially in a time like this where you see everyone who's contributed to the effort and contributed to the fighting, and those who are going back in the reserves. It's something that leaves, I think, as an Oleh, it leaves me feeling like there's a critical part that's missing to the Israeli, to the contribution of Israeli society,
right,
so to speak. I think that it does come out sometimes in the way in which some Olim are viewed, though, which is not the most generous, but I'm hoping in the future that it becomes a bit better. I've observed it becoming better over time.
Yeah, I think especially this past, couple of years, people have more respect for Olim, because it's not, that's not an ideal time to make aliyah. And a lot of people made aliyah this past year, which is amazing. It's incredible to see. But I think as an Israeli, I think I respect anyone who decides to leave their life behind in the comfort of their home, like the United States or Europe, where it's considered more comfortable, I guess, in some sense, and then move to Israel with everything that's going on there all the time and the stress, and so good for you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what made you get into the winter sports, and specifically skeleton and then bobsled?
I always played winter sports my entire life. I grew up playing hockey from the age of 3 and really played for 20 years of my life. Mm-hmm. I switched over to bobsled and skeleton because for me, I wanted to contribute to Israeli and Jewish culture through sport. I thought it was a unique gift that I had been given in my life to have any sort of athletic talent or ability, and something that has been deeply disappointing or distressing to me continually is the lack of representation for which both the Jewish and Israeli communities have in sport. And the reason that there's a lack of representation is not because we don't do sport or we're not built for sport. We actually have some pretty amazing genetics. Like if all the Ashkenazim should realize that if Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal or any other person who comes from Europe can play at the highest level of sport, there's no reason that Jews cannot play at the highest level of sport, or Ashkenazim at least. And from the Mizrahim, oh my God, amazing athletes, just absolutely phenomenal, physically gifted people in Mizrahim, Sfarim. So really what it came down to is a realization that Jews and Israelis self-selected out of sport. They prioritized different things.
Yeah.
Sport is like the one thing that is just an absolutely pure meritocracy at the end of the day, or as close to one that you can get. So it's not like anti-Semitism has decimated Jews in sport. Anti-Semitism historically has played a significant role in Jews' access to sport, but not today. Right? Today, it's essentially if you could perform, you get on the team. But I think the mentality of, ask yourself, if you went to your parent and you said, I really want to learn the piano, I want to play the piano, I want to be a good piano player. Your parent will go find you piano lessons. Your parent will sign you up for after-school programs. Your parent will do so much to help you find success in that area. But if you say the same thing about, let's say, speed skating or skiing, right? Some parents are more open to skiing than others. I've known a lot of skiing fanatics, but just in general, the response will be something along the lines of, "Oh, do you think you can make a career out of that? You think there's a future in that?" And that's a very unhealthy way for a community to develop. Communities really are healthy when people participate and are active. And it also increases the visibility in a very kind way amongst everyone else, amongst other people, of how Jews interact and how we're honest and good people rather than just what they see on the news. So I wanted to change something. I wanted to be able to make a statement that we have a place in sport, that sport's something that can affect some real amazing positive change. But before being able to say that, I had to go do something. I had to go actually achieve something for which I can then speak about it. So that became the Olympic. The drive to make the Olympics was to have a platform to be able to speak about this.
That's great. I mean, Israel is not known for its winters, with the snow and everything. So I would say like the biggest sports in Israel are soccer, or, how we call it, football in Israel, right, and basketball. So it's not so much of winter sports. So it's amazing that we do have a representation.
Yeah, but I think like this is also a bit of a misconception, because the vast majority of the countries who participate in the Winter Olympics don't themselves have great winters to speak of, right? Like it's not like Australia has amazing winters,
right?
And the same goes with just so many other countries. South America, like Brazil. Brazil has been the last 6 Olympics in bobsled, right? An amazing bobsled team. They don't have they don't have huge winters over there. In fact, in these sorts of sports, like let's say in bobsled, there's 12 active tracks in the world, in the entire world, and like 3 or 4 of them are in Germany.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's not like the country. I think this is a very huge misconception, right? The country does not need to host the sport in order to participate in the sport. Sports are universal, right? Sports are simply the action of being active, right? Being active in a structured manner for which you compete against other people. Right. Just because Israel doesn't have a particular sport, to call a home sport, it doesn't mean that therefore their representation would be somehow less in the sport. In fact, I would say like Great Britain is like number 2 in the world in bobsled right now. They invest $20+ million into that sport, into flag bobsled. They do, but they're like number 2 in the world. They're amazing. They don't have a bobsled track. They don't have immense amounts of resources to do bobsled. I mean, they build some facilities, but this is the big, I think, real huge misconception that Israelis really have when it comes to sport is like, well, we don't do that in the country. What does it matter? Israelis are global people, right? Israelis don't do what's just in the country.
Right. Because, people look at it like we have judokas and we have I forgot the word. So we have like all the other little sports that go to the Olympics, and they all train in Israel. And I know so it's interesting to hear your side, and it's very different for your sport, obviously. So you guys train in Europe and in other countries?
Yes, we train all over the world, and as does every single other bobsled team. So bobsled is a sport in which tracks are all different. Like the tracks are not uniform; they don't build the same exact track at a specific place. They just have to have a minimum number of curves and speeds between 80 and 95 miles an hour, and that's basically the general guidelines of a track. But every track is different, significantly different. And so we're constantly moving around the world in order to train, in order to get better. So everyone in most winter sports, I'd say almost all winter sport, involves a high degree of movement throughout the world. Right, hockey teams constantly are going throughout the world to play hockey. Skiing, the World Cup takes them all over Europe, all over the place, to Azerbaijan, all sorts of interesting locations. So I think that's, when it comes to Olympic sport in particular, it's truly a global thing. Very, very few sports just remain in the country.
That's very interesting to know. I guess a lot of people don't realize that, so that's good. So how did you get into the Olympics specifically? What was the process like for you?
It's an extremely difficult process when it comes to winter sports to gain access to the Olympic Games. So the Olympic Games for winter is a third the size or less than the summer. The Summer Games is over 10,000 athletes, if I recall correctly, and the Winter Games has just around 3,000. And in the last number of cycles, really the last 10, 15 years, it's become incredibly difficult on the male side as well to make the games, because there's a very high degree of concentration of talent. But because of the strive for gender equity and equality, they have not increased the number of athletes in the games, simply balanced it out to a 50-50 mix, right? In which it used to be more skewed towards men in the games. Now it's a 50-50 mix. So to get into the games is a very, very tall task. When it comes to a sport like bobsled and skeleton, the way it works is on a quota system. So you earn points for the amount of races that you do. We'll do, let's say, 7 races, and each one of those races, according to the placement, we get a certain number of points. And at the end of the year, there's a list of the people and their points, or the people who represent the country and their points. And we have to be in the top 15 of countries by points to make it into the Olympic Games. There is 30 plus countries or more that participate, and the vast majority of, let's say, the 15 who will make it in have, not the vast majority, every single team that made it into the Olympics in the last games iteration were in the last 5 games, or in the last 5 Olympics, except for China, which got basically like an Olympics credit card when they got the Olympics awarded to them. It's how it works with almost every time a host country gets the Olympics, the investment in their sport goes through the roof. They not only get a free spot at the Olympics, it's called a host country spot, but their investment in all the sports goes really through the roof. So it's to be expected. But to knock off a legacy team in the Olympic Games in bobsled or skeleton, the racing sports, is a nearly impossible task. At the moment, we're in line to do it. And in the last games, we actually were in line to do it, but we ended up missing on the last day by 0.1 seconds. But at the moment, we're in line to do it, presently in the quota position.
All right, that's amazing. And how did your BobTeam Edelman come together?
It came together in the middle of COVID when the world shut down. I really wanted to understand what I was going to do. I was in business school at the time, and I was coaching other Israelis in skeleton, those who'd come after me. I was coaching them usually by staying on Zoom and Skype with them for long periods of time. But when the world shut down, I thought it would be a really interesting opportunity to try to further increase the visibility of what we could do in winter sport if I were to put together a bobsled team and make it. And Israel hadn't had a really actually competitive bobsled team that could make the Olympics for 20 some odd years, since 2002, 2003. And that was really, for me, like, hey, everyone kind of knows the movie Cool Runnings, or I think in Israel it's called Tachat Me'efes. Everyone knows about that team from the 80s, the Jamaican team. So wouldn't it be amazing if we could make the Olympics in bobsled for Israel and really create a story that lasted for a very long time?
That's great. So in the past year, you've been very active online on social media, supporting Israel, speaking for Israel, speaking the truth, and showing the other side of things. And I know it's been an incredible journey for you. I mean, it feels like it from what I witnessed because I've been following you around, on social media. So how did that impact you personally and professionally?
I think it has greatly hindered the ability of the team to obtain sponsorship.
Mm.
Israel is always somewhat of a political football.
Yeah.
But since Israeli companies have never really sponsored the bobsled team, actually Toyota in Israel sponsored, was our only Israeli company to ever sponsor the bobsled team.
Oh.
Like they sponsored in the initial run in 2021, 22, but thereafter withdrew from the sponsorship. But no other Israeli company has ever sponsored our team. So we searched for sponsorship outside of Israel, and it made us toxic. No one wanted to touch the team. To be honest, it was something that I anticipated. I understood what would come with the advocacy or being so outspoken, but all of my teammates were called to war after October 7th, and they were fighting. There is absolutely no reason that a team that exists as an extension of the state of Israel does not also fight in the way that it can. So to me, it became very important to be an extension as much as I could of the online effort when it came to the war, both for the community as well as, within the community. I think sometimes people have felt so attacked and so alone that it became important for me as well to kind of be a voice that people could hang on to within the community. So that they, sometimes it just helps to open up and see your thoughts reflected and say, I'm not so crazy. That's been a very important part, I think, of my own personal journey since, in the last 503 days.
Yeah.
Is to really project our voice out into the world.
Has it changed your relationship to Israel in any way?
No, the relationship with Israel was always, I think
or maybe like made it stronger, or
No, it's always been very, very much the same. I think everything that I do in life for the last 10 plus years has really been with a thought. Anything of any sort of consequence or significance has been with the thought, how does it reflect on Israel? The incredible blessing and honor of representing a country in sport is that you've been gifted that from the country, right? I can't just throw on an Israeli flag and walk up to a competition and say, hey, I'm from Israel. Israel has to give me permission to represent the country. I think with that comes an incredible responsibility to comport yourself and to act in a way that's positively reflecting on the country and on the people who represent the country. So my tie to Israel, or my feelings towards Israel, my connection to Israel has been, I think, so as tight as it could be, or as elevated as it could be, because for the last 10, 11 years, every single day I've woken up and asked, how can I get Israel to where it needs to go in my own way? But it has certainly helped me connect with the community as well in a different way, because sport is an incredibly lonely road, especially being in the middle of bobsled tracks are generally built in the middle of nowhere, right? They're not built in the middle of cities, and so it is very rare that I get to see and meet other Jews or Israelis. Sometimes they'll see the bobsled team van and they'll come up and we'll talk, and they'll say, I'm Israeli, I'm visiting for whatever winter trip I'm on. But I think it's allowed me to connect to a lot more people than I generally would have in the course of sport.
Did you get to go to Israel this past 500 days?
No, I haven't. Every single dollar that is spent in my life is spent towards the team. So going to Israel, buying a ticket to Israel is one fewer ticket than I can purchase for someone to come from Israel to compete for the team, because I'm responsible for the entire team's budget. So I have not been able to go back to Israel because that would represent the loss of someone being able to come over here to perform a very critical function for the team. I feel it. I feel distressed at not having been able to go back. But for also a very large part of that time, tickets were enormously expensive because
Yes.
Lal was the only person flying. So just imagine $3,000 lost from the team for me to go to Israel is, I mean, that's a significant. It's like a month or half a month of housing for the team that we needed. So just was not able to make it work.
How many athletes are in your team?
Generally, we like to keep 4 plus myself or 5 plus myself.
That's a lot of expenses.
Yes, a lot of expenses. There's also a coach that we need to pay and all sorts of other miscellaneous stuff. But we generally like to have on a 4-person team at least 5 people. Because someone is always going to get hurt.
Okay, so you guys have been like getting ready now for the Olympics. You've been competing in recent competitions. How has that been for you in terms of encountering any anti-Israel, protests, or any athletes that are anti-Israel that are trying to heckle you like they do for musicians nowadays, and cancel performers and all these things?
We've had a lot of encounters with people who are pretty vocal. Like, I think the one thing about people who are anti-Zionists or, kind of Jew haters is they're so vocal about their hatred.
I wish they weren't vocal at all, but yeah.
No, honestly, I prefer it. Like, I really think that it's a gift to us to be able to see people's thoughts and people's understanding of where we stand in the world. I think one of the big problems that really faced the community post 10/7 was some sort of shock. How could people think this? How could people say this? How could this be so normalized? I think that there's a bunch of people who are I think there's a subset of the population that is more hopeful and optimistic. And there's a segment of the Jewish population that's always going to be pessimistic and a little more pragmatic. And I say pragmatic not to insult the optimistic ones, but pragmatic from the standpoint of it's very impossible not to realize that those more cynical folks were absolutely correct in their assessment of the situation that has played out in the last 16 months of just virulent Jew hatred. I was always in the more cynical category of both of my mother's parents were survivors, came from Europe, lost immense amounts of their family, and I think it's always been, in my view, a reality that just kol ha'olam soneh Yehudim, right? Like,
that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's the literal translation. If those of are listening and don't know Hebrew, is the whole world hates the Jews. It's not. I would say it's not to be taken literally that the entire world hates the Jews. It's that wherever there is civilization, there is Jew hatred. Right? Wherever there is people in the world, you'll find a pocket of Jew hatred.
Right. It's not like every single person, but you see it. And the thing is that they are more vocal than others. Incredibly so. So it's in your face all the time.
Incredibly so, because their hatred takes on a form of moral superiority, which is very, very foreign to most people who would encounter hatred, where the hatred is somewhat, it's viewed as a superiority, but not necessarily a moral superiority. Anyway, so we've encountered a lot of very vocal anti people. I mean, my favorite encounter though is it was like 6 a.m. and it was minus 15 degrees centigrade outside. It's very cold. We were traveling from Lake Placid, New York, all the way across the continent to Whistler, British Columbia. So it was like a 3,000-mile trip. It was a very long trip. And we had hit somewhere in Western Canada, and we're at a gas station. This guy just gets out and he's screaming, "Free Palestine, free Palestine!" Like as I'm pumping gas, because our van's a big billboard for Israel.
Mm.
Free Palestine, free Palestine. I turned to the guy. I said, "I'm too tired for this right now. Go take your free Palestine to the warmth."
Well, did he free them?
Say again?
Did he free them?
Did he? I don't know what he wanted to accomplish. I think he just wanted me to get pissed off, and I was just like, "I'm too tired for this. Like, I don't have the energy to argue with you." You know, a lot of times I'll have like a clap back a little bit, you know, just so they don't come away with the satisfaction that they beat down the Jew. You know, like I think you should stand tall. You don't accomplish anything by clapping back, but
Right.
you have, but it doesn't leave the impression at least that they cowed the Jew into silence, or that they you know, that they left somehow with the Jew being too stunned to speak, or you know.
Yeah, I
So,
think we're past that time. We're no longer silent.
for sure. But you know, generally I'll respond pretty forcefully. But in that situation, it's like, well, what are you doing? It's like 6 a.m. It's freezing your ass off in a gas station. Like, there's a time and a place for your hatred. It's not here.
Yeah. It reminds me of those people that post Free Palestine on a video, someone making a sandwich, like some ridiculous stuff.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like that's not the place. I mean, I don't know.
Their hatred is very consuming.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like that's all they can say. They never say anything else. This is it. Like no, and when you try to talk to them, if you try to talk to them, there's no reasoning to anything. Like they don't know anything. They just keep screaming at you, "Free Palestine," for
Right.
Well, what does your family think about everything that you've been doing?
I think they're proud. I mean, I don't ask them like, "Hey, what do you think?" I
Yeah.
think they're proud. I think they're proud. Yeah.
Like, are they worried? You know that you're out there with your team representing Israel and with everything that's going on.
No, I think it's something proud for them.
That's good. So where can people learn about your team and how can they support you guys?
That's a great question. So you can learn a little bit more about the team at israelbobsled.com. It's easy to remember, israelbobsled.com. Otherwise, shoot me a message on Instagram. I generally try to check the messages. There's a lot of automated garbage messages that come through, so sometimes it gets drowned out. But actually, if you DM the Israel Bobsled Instagram, so just go to Instagram Israel Bobsled. You can also DM that Israel Bobsled Instagram. That's probably an easier way to get through to me. To support the team, there's a donation link. It's tax deductible in the United States on the website for israelbobsled.com. But you know, we would like to, sleds are kind of like billboards. They're if you ever see like racing cars, it's a racing sport. So in racing sports, the cars or the vehicles are covered in sponsorship logos from companies. Our sled is presently blank. So we'd love to put some companies on it, especially because we're one of the best teams in the world. And I mean that in all seriousness. We finished 3rd place overall in North America last year. We finished 4th place this year, 0.08 seconds out of 3rd. We're an amazing team. We're ranked 22nd in the world at the moment. We're in line for that Olympic quota spot if we can find the right amount of sponsorship and support. And that, you know, let's do something special together. So if you want to be a part of some real unique, cool history for Israeli and Jewish sport, please get in touch.
Yes, and I'll share the link in the description of the podcast, so
Sure.
It's easier for people.
Mm-hmm.
What is your message to the non-Jewish world, especially as an athlete?
That's a good question. I don't think that it's ever the role of Jews are a non-evangelical religion. So we're not preachy people. And I don't really like any sort of moral superiority or superiority that like in terms of messaging. I've never been a fan of like the Jews have X amount of Nobel Prizes, you know, for that reason. Like it kind of reeks of there's a difference between pride and superiority. So I don't really have a message for non-Jews. I think that at the end of the day, what I guess I would say is if there was a non-Jewish person listening, that I guess all of what I have hoped to convey in the last year, I think what most Jews have tried to convey in the last 16, 17 months, is that we're just asking for the same standard applied across moral spectrums, right? The standard that when viewing this conflict, there's nothing that would really ever justify, no matter what happened 80 years ago or what you claim happened 80 years ago,
Right.
or what's going on in another country, because Gaza is a completely separate place in the West Bank. There's nothing that would justify stealing someone's 9-month-old and then murdering them and then parading them in the town square. Like, it's not human behavior. It's not normal behavior, right? So I think that a lot of the messaging really comes down to, would you accept that person as your neighbor, right?
Right.
I mean, forget the fact that Palestinians are not even remotely close to Native Americans, right? But even if they were, would you accept Native Americans pouring over into community and raping people and murdering them and dragging them back to their place and just having parades and after they've brutally killed them? No, of course you wouldn't. You'd say it's barbaric and it's problematic.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think it's all I would ever ask, right? No special treatment, nothing. Just, would you tolerate that of your neighbor? If the answer is that you would tolerate it of your neighbor, I feel sad for your children, right? Like, that you would be willing to offer up your child as some sort of sacrifice. But if you wouldn't, why would you expect us to like? Why would you expect anyone to have that as a neighbor? That's really what I was so struck by today. Right. Today is a horrific day. The parading of a 9-month-old child that was stolen, in the town square, like it's some movie, like it's a big entertainment event. No one would accept that from their neighbors. No one would ever say that that's a neighbor, that they want that in their community. And that's really what hits so hard. It's like, people marched for this, people advocate for this. No excuse.
Yeah, it's that people lost their souls. That's what it seems like. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, I mean, all we ever wanted was to live, peacefully and just, live like a normal country, like, with, nobody's trying to kill us at any given moment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, I have a little segment I like to call my favorite Israeli thing. So who is your favorite Israeli athlete?
We'll go with Jared Firestone. He succeeded me in skeleton. He's a great dude. He's a great representative of the country. He presently competes and is also headed, hopefully, towards Milan, the Olympics.
All right. Good luck to him. Who is your favorite historical figure?
Israeli or overall?
Israeli
historical figure.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say Golda.
Yeah, Golda's awesome.
Golda's amazing.
Yes. What is your favorite Israeli food?
I was about to say shawarma, and then I realized as I've gotten older, the amount of fattiness that's in a shawarma has, for some reason, become a turnoff.
But the flavors, and
Okay, you know what? A really, really good falafel in a lafa.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it has to be in a lafa. I can't do the pita. Like, it falls apart. It's hard to eat. Like, a lafa has to be.
It depends on the pita. Some places make really good pita that doesn't fall apart.
It will never, because it needs to have enough hummus and tahini inside, not to get soggy and awful.
What is your favorite Israeli vacation spot? If you got to go vacation in Israel,
Netanya.
Really?
Yeah, it's got a beautiful beach. It's still got some city vibes. It's not. I don't like Tel Aviv. It's very dirty, in my opinion. Like the beach.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, Netanya is quite beautiful, but I also like the Golan. When I
Yeah, the
visited
Golan is
school,
beautiful.
the Golan is amazing. It's just a no-go zone at the moment. So
Yeah, I know. I have family there, so they had to evacuate, of course, but it's a gorgeous place. It's beautiful.
yes.
And then lastly, what is your favorite Hebrew word or expression?
Chaval al hazman.
Oh yeah.
When I was growing up, I literally was always literally translating words in my head because that's how I learned Hebrew when I was younger, to literally translate word by word. So
Mm.
when I started hearing it said, I was like, wait, they're saying it's a waste of time. They're saying it's like a
Like a
bad
pity on the time or
a
something like
penny
that.
on the
Yeah.
time. Like, what is this? But it turned out to be quite the good thing. So that's why I always went Chaval al hazman.
Yeah. So to those who don't know, Chaval al-Azman means it's amazing. It's like this is so good. Like this ice cream Chaval al-Azman. It's like so good. Like that's more or less what it means.
I think the kids today would say it slaps, but this was
Yeah, yeah, right.
it slaps for like 2005 era.
Yeah, or like today I would say Reese or something. I don't know.
There we go.
Yeah. I guess my 10-year-old daughter, she's still like trying to figure out the Reese and all these words.
Good luck to
Oh,
her. Good
yeah,
luck.
I know. All right. Well, AJ, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
My
And I'm
pleasure.
glad we got to do it finally.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time.